Testing a few slides. This works. Slight change of plan. Apparently, the creator of JavaScript is among us right now. I can't see you, but can we give a round of applause to the creator of JavaScript, please? It's funny because I follow Brendan Nike on Twitter a little bit, and you know what? This is not very polite, talking in the presence of creator of JavaScript. You know, I totally forgot I still had a gum in my mouth. And at one point, you know what? Honestly, he was a little bit defensive because people were cursing JavaScript, and he was like, "Yeah, but I only got 7 days or 10 days to create the language." And I was like, "This is right. This is we're asking too much from a programming language creator this way." And the next tweet was, OCaml wouldn't have taken off at the time when I drafted JavaScript. I'm like, whoa, okay. Think about it. You created a language in 7 to 10 days that you yourself admit isn't perfect, and now JavaScript is taking over the world, and you really think that OCaml isn't taking off because of its language merits, not because of the community, Like we all of us here programming JavaScript, we know it's flaws, we know it's not perfect, but here we are, a big community, right? And this is actually the talk today. This talk, I feel it's bigger than Reason. It's at a React conference, but I personally feel it's really bigger than React too. It's not just about abstractions either, it's about the language and the meta language that we use every day. So Reason is relatively recent and actually relatively old at the same time. It's a relatively both effort from Facebook, from the creator of React. It's friendly and syntax and toolchain on top of OCaml, the language, and we tried really hard to make OCaml, the syntax, as familiar as possible for the JavaScript developers. And in case you're wondering why, you will understand after this talk. And also, by the way, has anyone seen the movie Arrival? Pretty good movie, huh? Yeah, this talk is sponsored by Paramount Picture. Arrival is actually very important. It shows the importance of language, shows what we can bake into the language, shows that when we bake things into the language, things get magically more intuitive, more fluid. And we can communicate better with each other this way. Teaching a language is hard. We use meta language to teach a language, and this is the topic today. Do you know what I'm presenting today, though? Not just Reason? Okay, I'll give you a hint, all right? All right? Okay. Ooh. What is that? A red React logo. This is what we're presenting today. Come on, come on. A few years ago, I was on the React team, and every week we'll have a meeting, Friday meeting, to talk about the progress we did during the week. And at one point, there was someone who said, I think it was Paul, who said, someone outside wants to write a book on React. And it was cool or not, but it was a few years ago, and my knee-jerk reaction was, holy crap, a book on React? React should be something that's easy to learn, You pass 1 or 2 weekends on it, and you can get an app going. Do we really need a book on React? Turn out the book covered more than just React. Turn out the book actually covers the ecosystem at that time, the tooling, the philosophy behind it, which is nice. And it ended up pretty well. And indeed, at the end, it deserved a book. But that wasn't my more important thought. My more important thought started from that moment a few years ago and sparked this talk. And I was thinking, shipping React, pressing the saving file button, and then checking into version control, npm publish. That wasn't the end of the project. That wasn't the final step of the project. That was the beginning of the project, like someone said to me recently. And likewise for Reason, pushing Reason React bindings onto GitHub wasn't the end of the project. It's the start of a new community. It's the hard part starts from there. I would like to introduce you kind of an informal scale of language and meta-language, kind of like a somewhat abstraction-ish scale. This scale is by no means accurate. It's just it just serves as an illustrative example. At the end, we have this thing that in this context we're going to call language, which is the actual code that you write every day. And after language, immediately surrounding language are tests and comments and all of the toolings we use every day. Like it or not, you use it every day. You make comment. The comment might not be part of the actual language, but it's very intertwined with the actual thing you do every day, right? As an engineer. A modern engineer scope and impact gets bigger, so you no longer can just stay at that language level. You have all that meta language that you need to master to tame. And from the moment you really press save on your file, your meta coding activity starts, right? Be it just publishing the library, fixing bugs, convincing your boss that this is a good thing to do, go on Twitter, shout against people, this is the meta activity that's very intertwined with what you're doing. And I'm going to call them, for the purpose of this talk, everything that's not code, I'm going to call them meta code. There's a scale here, but for the simplicity of things, I'm not going to subdivide them. And here's a property of such scale. It's that everything below is going to be simpler than everything that comes above, right? Nobody has trouble writing a React component, but lots of people will have trouble convincing their boss that this React framework is going to be valuable for their company, blah, 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 right? Because it gets fuzzier, it gets complex in a very real sense of the word complexity. And here's a rhetorical question for you. Everybody knows Lodash _ these utility libraries for manipulating JavaScript data structures. Why isn't there a conference on Lodash or underscore? Right? It's a rhetorical question. Because they're utility libraries. They're meant to get out of your way. They're meant to have a good documentation page. You install it, you use it, and then that's it. And that's probably the wish of their authors too. They don't want this to blow up into a huge conference or write some manuals or book about it. They want you to be productive and move on. But why is there a conference on React.js then? And maybe a conference on React Native in the future. Why is there such conference? Well, another rhetorical question is because UI programming is still a hard problem. It's an unsolved problem, like dependency management, like lots of stuff in our domain. UI programming, it's going to be hard for another while. This is why we have a conference, and we use this meta language of people gathering together and talking about it to solve this hard problem. Because at one point, writing a few lines of code just isn't enough anymore. And in that note, I would like to thank the past engineers who worked on solving all the low-level performance problem. I would like to thank the React team for actually making this performant intuitive so that we can use better paradigms, so that we don't have to go down and manually fine-tune the DOM mutation anymore after 4 years. And you see how solving the low-level pieces and baking more into these low-level pieces tastefully enabled us to gather today, not to talk about how to iterate over an array anymore, how to optimize the assembly instructions anymore. It enables us to talk about fuzzier things, which gradually also becomes less and less fuzzy as we solve more and more of React. Right? And it used to be that an iterator was a meta-language design pattern, and now it's just simply a language design pattern. And it used to be that what used to be, meta language can now just be at the meta-language level and hopefully at the language level. This is my point with Arrival. It wasn't just a joke at the beginning. Once you build things into the language, everything interoperates is kind of magical. All right. So what I want to do every day, and I'm sure most of the engineers here would agree, it's to actually coding in language, but I can't. I'm doing this talk right now and just going really meta about things. And then I use editor, I use Git. I don't understand Git. I use an editor, and then people tell me to use another one, and it's tool, documentation, tool, code, tool, documentation, and everybody's happy. And I'm not that happy about it. I don't want to use library anymore. I want to express the same thing, exact same thing, without the need of a library. And this is going to be the theme today. All right. And you might ask, why not libraries and all of that? But as long as these things stay meta, they are lossy, hard to quantify, hard to qualify, ceremonious, requires local meetups and documentation and again, tutorials, whatever, and complex. All right, enough of this slide. And here's a React API. And for me, this is a very great example of React. And a very great example of how to be a nice library citizen in the JavaScript community. React solves the language part very well and solves the meta language part very well. In the sense that, under the hood, we might still be re-implementing, scheduler, fiber, or whatever, and for performance and control. But the consumer API really makes you feel like you're really just writing JavaScript. You're just using the language. You're not passing knowledge around in your head to another person and hoping that person understands it. Look at the benefit when you use this language. I'm sure you can feel it, and I'm sure this is one of the major benefits that everybody here can relate to. When they use React, they feel like they're using JavaScript. And I would say more altruistically, one day when React isn't needed anymore in a few years or so, the lesson will still stay there. This lesson will be still in the language and will be learned, and we move forward to maybe the next paradigm, but the lesson stays there. We didn't create this ivory tower of library, shove it apart, and then go back to the Stone Age and relearn what it means to actually write to the HTML, This is very important. But I do want to show you the next step today. And you might think this API, wow, it's very convenient, and it's mostly basically JavaScript now. What can possibly be rolled back into the lower level? What possibly can make React even simpler so that instead of 10K lines, it can be 1K line? All right? So this is where reason comes in. I would like to formally introduce the Reason project again for those who didn't hear about it. OCaml is a language. Reason is a syntax and toolchain powered by OCaml that we use at Facebook. Facebook uses OCaml in Hack, the JavaScript, the PHP type checker, and Flow, now the JavaScript type checker everybody has heard about. And more surprisingly, Reason, the concept at least, played a role in the prototyping of the early version of React by Jordan. And 4 years later, here we are again. Reason is also an umbrella project for a curated set of tools, ecosystem choices, and a centralized place where you can check out documentation and all. And we're still actively polishing that. And I hope our effort shows there that you can get productive in Reason at least at a superficial level very quickly. Hopefully, we get you hooked afterward. Right. And of course, what is this? We made some React.js bindings. They are bindings, they are not re-implementation. I want to emphasize on this point that they are not re-implementation yet, but we all need to get productive, right? We don't want to say, oh my gosh, yet another language, yet another ecosystem. I got to go back and rewrite all my components now. No, I don't want that to happen. We want to use the existing ecosystem. And interoperability is a very important part of the Reason ecosystem. Being able to use existing code, that's real life. I don't get to carve out my little niche and say, well, screw other people's concern. I'm just going to care about a code, not a meta code, not a meta code, just my little app. I don't get to do that at Facebook. And if you want any proof of that, I'll show you a slide later, and just believe me right now. And I'm going to take a few shots at React, okay? Some low blows at React, because it's easy to take low blows at some parts of React. It's fun. Prop types, right? Prop types is that glaring part of React that everybody can point out and say, this should just be a language level thing, right? I'm already using Flow, TypeScript, whatever. And the Reason is no different, statically typed, strongly typed. We killed prop type completely. There's no Reason React prop type API at all. It's just types. And when we bake that into type, these works everywhere. And I'm sure in the JavaScript community, if you're not using Flow, if you're not using TypeScript, sometimes you're working in React and you're probably going to yourself, I would love to have prop types capability and error messages in these other libraries that I use, right? Prop types are great. I want to use it elsewhere. I want prop types to be able to compose with other stuff and interoperate with other stuff. When you bring them down to the language, that's what you get for free. All right? And a very, very good heuristic is that when you do an editor completion and the editor, the system, the computer knows what you're trying to say, then you know that you have baked your intention, baked your lossy context back into the code so that it can be carried forward and not be lost in version control or in informal conversations. Right? Just tell more through what you're saying. Write it down. So prop type is an easy target, of course, and you might wonder, is that it? Is this actually just about types? 15 minutes just about types? No. Let's stop taking low blows and take some high blows at JavaScript and Reason, JavaScript and React.js. So another glaring part that is a little bit React specific when people come into the React.js community is JSX, right? And they say, wow, HTML in my JS, blah, 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 and you have to explain to them like lots of meta-communication churn. And this meta-communication churn doesn't happen if your language actually provides a primitive to do JSX. So at the right-hand side is the labeled function syntaxes. We have labels in function called optional. Optional, you can have them, you cannot have them, but they map well to JSX. But if you still want the JSX sugar, we actually still implemented JSX, and it looks exactly like what's on the left. It's no longer mandatory. And the better part of it is it's agnostic. Everybody can plug it. Our JSX desugar to a macro call. Another library can plug a compile time. No need for the meta language of drafting a spec, reading Sebastian's spec, disagreeing with it, agreeing with it, and whatever. Just take the macro, transform it for your own library if you want, and just do it. Way less ceremony. And label arguments, I want to slip a few words to label argument. They're actually pretty great. They make what used to be meta, which is the comments that I put surrounding a function call, right into the language. They bake it into there so that I know exactly when I do set coordinates, that the first argument is an X, the second argument is Y, even though their types are the same. So it's still confusing, even if you're in Flow or TypeScript, right? You need the names when the types are the same. Otherwise, it's not going to warn it against you. And of course, label argument permits currying. So you can swap the argument order and know that you don't get into trouble because you apply them in the wrong order. This is very important, and they're much more descriptive. This way. So label drags things down. Okay, that's the theme of the talk: dragging things down into the language. All right. I'm going to actually stop taking easy shots at the React.js APIs now. The module API. This is what Reason React looks like on the right. This is what it looks like on the left. And one major pain point that Ryan Florence and Michael Jackson can tell you is that in their workshop, people come in, they use this language level feature, which is great, which is the S6 classes, and then you need to teach this, and this works a little bit differently. We eliminated that completely, not because we don't have that capability, but because we simply use other capabilities without the need of this completely. And module is a language level concept. And as a matter of fact, module is an entire new world for all of you coming from JavaScript. It's such a big world that I've decided to pull out this part of the talk into the next one, into React London. Please come and see me. During React London, I'll be talking about nothing but module. And just to give you a glimpse of things, modules map to files in OCaml. Files map to module in OCaml. And you can pass module into functions, so you can actually have first-class files. This is another level of expressivity completely. All right, let's just go on, otherwise I'll just only talk about module the whole day. Okay, let's pause a bit and revisit why we're doing this, why we're trying to kill all these concepts in order to just express them in the language. There are some meta benefits to it too. Less moving parts, right? If your API is smaller, less bugs possible. That's very natural. Less one-off things to learn. You learn one thing, you know you can apply it to somewhere else now. Less expensive mistakes too, because if you retract 10 lines of code, you know you can just go and write another 10 lines that does a similar functionality. If you build a library, and the library as an entity doesn't work out and someone wants to blow it away, you're blowing away not just the deprecated, ugly part of the library, you're blowing away years of valuable efforts. Right? 10,000 lines of code, there's going to be some good parts in it. And you don't want to write 10,000 lines of code and have them blown away and like the value lost in translation. You know, when the new library comes up and they didn't check your implementation because it's so long and it's so boring, and they remake the same mistake as you do. I think this sounds familiar for some of us in the React.js ecosystem, right? Less is more, really. Less is more. And if you fail, maybe there's another language level concept that will be sitting there waiting for you to use again. Do you see how we documented knowledge into code form, how we just wrote it down? Not necessarily just in prose, but in actual executable code. What was once meta language is now just a language. Take your blog post, okay? Take your blog post, roll it back into the library form. Take your library, roll it back lower. Take your test, roll it back lower. Bake some of it into the type system, for example. This makes your library last. And to be clear, it doesn't necessarily mean that your project, this is very important, it doesn't necessarily mean that your project is going to be easier for newcomers or less abstract or more abstract or anything. Because if you use language features, it totally depends on whether the language feature is actually more or less abstract, right? But the point here is, if you use language feature, assuming they are good, then you're communicating in the actual thing that was engineer is supposed to communicate with each other with. And you know, I speak English, right? In America, I can be understood. If I go to London do a talk, I will be understood. And there might be some cultural differences and some pronunciation differences, but people can understand me. And the tragic reality of the JavaScript ecosystem is, I consider myself relatively decent in JavaScript, but that doesn't mean I can be productive with a code base built on top of hundreds of libraries. You know, I can speak JavaScript, I can write JavaScript, but it still takes me as much time as maybe an intermediate or newcomer at mastering the library and being productive in the library. I feel like this is a little bit tragic. So let's do less of that, please. I want to go through these sections a little bit more quickly, but you can just trust me that this actually is the case. Another thing that's a little bit hard to remove from the JavaScript ecosystem, but that's extremely easy to remove in reason React bindings is clone element. We currently don't implement clone element. We think it's not valuable enough because we can just use language features. See, you no longer need to construct a full component, and then in that owner, just clone over it, mutate a few props, and then return that, and like everybody don't understand what you're actually doing sometimes, and it's not statically type checked. Here, what we're using is simply currying. You know, title.createElement, it takes a name and it takes a class name. But right now, I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to partially construct it, and you go do it. You go take that partially constructed component, finish currying that, and the syntax here helps to give you a visual indication that you're just putting more arguments at the end. And at the end, you finish applying it, it all type checks. There's just no ceremony anymore, right? I think Michael Jackson and Ryan Florence is at the backstage, and they were probably going to thank me later for not needing yet another day of React workshop to just teach what clone element or whatever it is. You know? Everybody can get productive much quicker. We also killed ref and key. They're still there, but they are nothing but ordinary prop level concept. More on that another time. And set state, we also relegated set state to kind of an escape hatchy fallback situation. It's still there, but you no longer need it in most situations, right? Lifecycle event, destructure on prop and state, no this, needed, right? And then you just return the next state wrapped in a sum or a none. None indicating it's a no, I don't have anything to update. Sum indicating I have something to update, here's the new state. And we have the object spread syntax there to help guiding you to make it more familiar, basically. But you'll have plenty of time to play with Reason React. And I don't want to bore you reading through the APIs or anything. And I want to prove that this is not reason React specific. It's not just something that we carefully polish and then the rest of the language doesn't actually help you in guiding you in making library decisions. We have a syntax formatter, kind of like Go formatter, kind of like Prettier. Actually, Prettier was explicitly inspired from a reason format, as James have said before. Now see, with the types and with the automatic syntax formatter, you unlock some new nice properties, right? You no longer need a linter. We do have a linter, just nobody uses it. Why would you need a linter anymore, right? No linter. Now that's easier for the newcomers to begin, right? This alleviates lots of tooling, which is good, to accomplish the same task. And yesterday when I was walking around, I've had people ask me, Chenlu, how do you? I can't figure out how to video code that knowledge. I understand most of what I'm thinking, most of what you're saying, but there's just no way I can convey that to my coworkers, right? Those configurations, like how do I teach them that? It's not clear, and the philosophy is kind of lossy. You don't see it in the code. And I said, this is a human problem. This is very hard to solve. The best thing I can say is bake it into the language, make it disappear so that it doesn't become a problem anymore. So another cool thing we're going to have is soon we're going to have, just like React, we're going to have per library pluggable error reporting. Everybody loves React's error messages. It was a must in the Facebook company-wide because people can't just bother the React maintainers all the time and ask, what does this error mean? So we introduced these kind of runtime checks, dev time checks. And now, in the reason community, we will soon be able to have library-specific error reporting for every library. No ceremony. You don't need a team of infra people dedicating themselves to polish the error messages anymore. Tests, that's an easy one, right? Type kills a category of tests, not all the tests. And this is a discussion I think people don't appreciate enough. They always pit tests against types and all. The point is, if you have types and you add tests, your test will be able to express much more with less energy, right? You don't need to assert on invalid input anymore. You can assert on something more important. Tests can be there if you want. You're just saying much more with the test. And when you drag things from the meta language into the language, this is what you get. We polish all the level upward, right? All the level upward are now richer for the same amount of energy you spent on them. So the next time if you grab a suite of tests, you'll be asserting on very valuable, complex data flows, not just asserting that, I pass an int, should I pass a string or something like that. Comments, this is a funny one. We can bake the comment into the ESD, and we can bake comment into the documentation, and OCaml documentation generation tool, the comments are actually type checked, and they may statically verify that when you refer to a module, to that function inside that module, that this comment is actually valid and won't go stale. Here you go, we bake comment into the language. We're not 100% there yet. We're still exploring the possibility of this, but macros can also work on comment and correct your spelling mistake. I don't know. Documentations. We have interface file with nothing but types. There's more on this later. And finally, I want to talk about something else because we're running out of time. There's just so many things to talk about. Deprecation messages. What used to require a team of dedicated React developer or maybe Angular Ember developers to craft, we're migrating from version 1 to version 2. Here's a blog post. Here's exactly what you have to learn. We can't do this for every library. And we're really passionate about making these kind of deprecation better, but in the real world, 90% of libraries, they don't have upgrade path. They don't have warning messages. At best, they put a change log there, and that's it, right? And we're making that better and baking that into the language so that the tools can help you, so that the other people can also help you understand what exactly this is. This, if you use this type, the compiler will warn you. This is a tag or a decorator or whatever you call it. The compiler will warn you, please use the type greeting instead. Pretty nice upgrade path, right? Not too elaborate, right? So that was about taming the meta language, of bringing things lower. we've gone through quite a few items today. I want to actually have a small part to talk about not just taming the meta language, but also be realistic and speak the meta language. You might not know what I mean immediately, but hopefully when we talk with each other, this will be clear. Meta language is always hard. As much as I like to bake everything into the language and all of this lower, sometimes it's not necessarily into the language, but into the build tool chain so that everybody can take advantage of it. I am the first to admit that no amount of rolling things back into a lower level is going to solve what human interaction solves. No amount of nice type checking, great unit test tools, good library is going to solve what this conference is trying to solve, which is face-to-face talking about things. We're really far from that. Ideas are brittle first, and as a first step to acknowledging that meta language will always exist while pulling the necessary part back into the language, I want to acknowledge the effort that went into the Reason language and the Reason React projects. These ideas started with one person or two people. A better paradigm of language is one of the necessary ingredients for success, maybe, but it takes more than that. You've got to be kidding if you think a better type system is going to make a whole community take off. That is not true. And today, thanks to these people's effort, Messenger.com is actually 25% converted over to Reason now. And thanks. We're actively proving, using the language itself and using the meta language, that Reason is something that normal JavaScript developer can use to be productive in. It's not an academic oddity or shiny toy. You can be productive in this language, and with a little bit of effort, you can actually use this in production, not just on Saturdays. All right. So, as a gesture of acknowledging this meta language, I would like to first acknowledge these three people from the Reason team. Jordan Walk, who probably waited 4 years for this moment. He prototyped React in a language called SML, cousin of OCaml, and the community wasn't ready at that point. So we shelved it, transcribed it into JavaScript, made that take off. Jordan, the master of meta languages, made that take off, and then 4 years later, when we decided the community is ready to come to the next step, we unshelve it, and now here I am presenting this to you. Without Jordan, I wouldn't be talking to you about any of this. So I would like to personally thank Jordan for doing all this work. It's your folks here and your attitude that will make this community take off, and that did make React take off. It's not necessary that React is just a great library, right? All right. BuckleScript, Bloomberg. I didn't know Bloomberg was a technical powerhouse before, but apparently it is. Who knows? And Bob Zhang from Bloomberg, who actually made OCaml compile to JavaScript. So OCaml now, using Reason and BuckleScript, it actually compiles to both native and JavaScript. I'm a little bit tired right now, so maybe my passion doesn't come through. But what I really mean is, it compiles to native and JavaScript, right? Without Bob, without his pragmatism and his years of expertise, I would be talking to a small audience of OCaml folks right now, not a large audience of JavaScript folks and potential OCaml folks who are listening, who are interested in React. And Bob has been a tremendous help, and I really appreciate his effort. I think he's actually listening to this right now. And I appreciate his help so much that Jordan gets a little bit jealous. Well, good for you. All right, and Andre, Pop, and Sanders, who have been with us, and some of the code you write, you should thank these two people at the top. They've been contributing to React since 4 years ago, and they've been contributing to Reason since a year ago. I really appreciate these two people in particular, and countless other people. And the other people here who have helped me make this reality, too, in the Discord channel, and countless other people in IRC whose name I cannot pronounce, but I thank you all. And the language side, we got inspired from Elm, great messaging Elm, very pragmatic stance. F#, kind of a mutual inspiration. F# was inspired by OCaml. And Closure, my personal inspiration, and Rich Hickey will always a personal hero. Where's Haskell? Good. I failed to tame the meta language, I guess. Right? Of course, I thank Haskell too. Elm is here, pure like there are lots of languages. But Elm really was a one of the biggest inspirations. All the other languages out there, we're all in this together. And research, they cite links at the end, right? They cite other papers so that when this research doesn't turn out well, people look at the links and they say, maybe we can fork off from here and check somewhere else. Don't build a huge library without giving credit, because when that library crumbles, people go back to the Stone Age, like I said, and make their own thing and make the same mistake as you did if you don't give prior art, if you don't give credits. So keep coding, folks, while we actually tame this meta language. Don't forget to speak the meta language. And when that time comes, when in a few years we realize that React becomes somewhat of a solved problem, that everybody who knows Reason or JavaScript can just code in React without ceremony anymore, then we will come back to this conference, and instead of talking about just how to write React, how to thread through data flow, maybe we can talk about something deeper, something more technical, something that is more exciting than just building React and shipping React. And thank you, and see you in the Reason Discord room.